Hello, everybody, and welcome to take two of Church at Home with Rachel from Monday, the 18th of December. I was almost through taping when the phone rang, and I have yet to figure out how to hit pause on this camera and make it work. So here we go again. I was reading last week in Soul Fuel by Bear Grylls in my morning office. I started a new section. It's called Vision, and it was really powerful for me, and I'd like to share it with you today. This is Bear Grylls speaking. There was a time a few years ago when things were tough at work. We were out there trying to find our way, earn a living, and do something good that felt in line with faith. But when we got to season 3 of Man vs. Wild, there was a whole spate of negative press, and we came really close to the show being cancelled. But in the end, Discovery Channel chose to invest in the show rather than kill it. Though it was difficult for a while, it ended up being the point from which it all started to accelerate dramatically. A great friend of mine, a guy I've always respected and who has helped me a lot in my faith, once told me that God's calling always has a birth, a death, and a resurrection. Sometimes when you're doing what's on your heart and going where your competency is, something catastrophic happens. You think that's the end of it, but actually that's precisely the time for you to have vision and hold on. That's your time to dig deep and trust that God will bless the plans he set in motion. It's easy to have vision when the days are clear and the going is smooth, but vision counts most when a storm hits and you can't see through the wind and debris. That's when you learn to depend on God and not your own strength. By the way, whether or not we feel we are working in our earthly calling, it is important also to remember that ultimately the only vision that really matters is the one that puts our lives into the hands of Christ. Our earthly calling is about our journey on this earth and the positive effect we hope to have. After all, we do want to do something good, right? It's important, but it really doesn't matter as much as the single vision of being with Christ. In terms of my earthly calling, I am hopefully still on that path, as is our team, doing our best in helping empower other people's adventures through TV, books, and so on. But what I do know is that today I can look back at the time when the TV show's future was so precarious and know that it was a key turning point. It was the moment when I had to have the courage to hold firm, to not panic, to not give up, and to trust God in it all. It was the moment I discovered what part of the vision for my life was God given. Vision is holding firm when everything else is less clear. It's doing the thing you said you'd do long after the clear 2020 vision has gone. I found that really powerful because an hour later, after doing that, I was preparing for my last book study in Dayspring. The last one I will lead as a priest because come January, we won't start that back up. At least I won't. As a leader, I just won't be around and able to focus so much on it before I leave in February. So I was reading, getting ready for the book study and feeling that sort of where is God's vision? Where am I in this? And how hard it's bittersweet to end this study. Plus, it was been an excellent book. It's called The Universal Christ by Richard Rohr, Rohr. It's absolutely phenomenal. If you haven't read this book, you need to read it. Read it slowly and with a pen in hand, and preferably with somebody else to talk to who's also reading it because it's filled with conversation starters. But was reading the book, and he was talking about how we come to understand the Christ presence in our lives and recognizing how we're called to live our life. That some people, want life to be filled with order, that everything is all lined up and perfect, and you do X, Y, and Z, you get to heaven. And for other people, their life is complete disorder, and it's there's nothing beyond that. So just leave it alone. And he makes the argument that we start in order, where things are black and white and they make sense, and we move into a season of disorder where things no longer make sense. But from that, we come into a time of real resurrection, a time when we become, because of the order we have known and the disorder that taught us how to get through the storms, the disorder that taught us to think new ways, to learn new things, that we come out of that. So we have life, we have death, and then we have resurrection. And in that resurrection is it's not talking about resurrection into heaven. It's talking about that resurrection where we're living with the recognition of Christ in our lives in a new way. And he talked about two examples he used were, one, that a tree cannot grow strong and hardy if it is never buffeted by the wind, if it's never tested, if it never has to grow the strength to beat the wind. If there'd never been a wind, anything could come by and push it. It's the wind itself. It's the very essence of the difficult things in life for that tree that make that tree grow stronger. And another example he used is a boat. We never build a boat to leave it in dry dock or to leave it, sitting in the harbor. Boats are meant to be taken out into the sea, into the water, where they will be bashed by waves and there will be winds that toss them around. But that boat, if it's made well, and the captain of that boat, if they know what they're doing, will learn how to be a better captain, will know how to pilot that boat because they have been tested by the wind and the sea. And thinking about what Bear said about vision and understanding that we are called not to live in the easy times, that quite often it's in those very difficult times, the times when we say, this isn't worth it. What's the point? I'm going to die. I'm losing my job. I'm losing everything. I've lost my partner, or I feel like I'm at risk of that. But it's in those moments that we can either quit, we can crumble up and fall down and say, I'm done, and then realize that we're not really done. We're just sitting in a heap on the floor and we still have to get back up. Or we can straighten our shoulders and we can say, all right, I can handle this. And if we are really reaching into that toolbox to pick out those tools that will help us the most, we will recognize that we can reach out to the divine who is stronger than we are, who can see beyond what we can see, and who can be that one who leads us. I keep thinking in terms of like a lighthouse, that if you are that captain at sea and your boat is being buffeted back and forth by the wind and the waves and you can't see in front of you, you don't know where to go, you don't know where the rocks are, you don't even know where your harbor is. When we turn to God, when we turn to Jesus Christ, and we look beyond us, we look beyond our own 2020 vision, as Bear said, and we see the vision of what God gives us, that light from that lighthouse, beckoning to us, beaming at us, drawing us forward. When we recognize that time in that chaos, when we've moved from order into disorder, or into that period that seems like death to the way we used to think, death to the way we used to think about things, we used to feel, we realize that when we let go of those things, that then is when we can come back into reorder. That's when we come into new life. That captain who is so paralyzed by fear and not knowing where to take his boat, how to go, if he sees the light from the lighthouse, but is too scared to drive toward it, to aim toward it, he's just going to perish. Death will be where he ends. But if he can climb out of that, if he can climb out of the disorder, out of that moment of death to himself and realizing, I cannot do this by myself, and he acknowledges that there's God offering to help. Doesn't mean God's going to do it, but God's offering to help. Then there is the opportunity for new life. We all have that in our lives. We all have those moments when we realize, when we come to that very human point where we have to say, I cannot do this by myself. And that is when we most often realize that there are other people or other resources around us that we are no longer blinded to. Our blinders have been on. And when we take those off, when we say, I give up, I'm done, I can't see a way forward, we shake our head, the blinders fall off, and we realize right there around us are the things that we need. But we have to be willing to reach out and receive them. They aren't ours to take, but they are ours to receive. So whether or not you believe in God, trust me, in those times, there will be people, there will be resources, there will be things that you need, but you have to be able to say to yourself, I need more than me. And then open your eyes to reach out for them. And if you are Christian, well, there you go. We know that. We live that. Sometimes it's easier than others to remember that. But in all those desperate times when we hit our knees because we are in despair, remember that when we hit our knees in despair, we are also have hit our knees, which means we can turn to prayer. And when we turn to prayer, our vision is opened and we can see beyond our 2020 vision. We can see beyond what our glasses allow us to see, and we can see new life and new hope and resurrection. My prayer for you is that this week coming, heading toward Christmas, is a whole week filled with moments of resurrection and new sight and new insight and new life. Have a great day. God bless, and I will see you again tomorrow for Church at Home with Rachel.